On the 12th of June 2009, a man boarded a bus in Derry Terminal. He was explicit, he was clear, he wanted to go to Sligo. He asked about Sligo and he got the Sligo bus. All that we're really left with is his visit to Sligo. We can't put him anywhere else in the world. He had gone to tremendous lengths to hide and secrete his identity.
The guards got in contact with me and showed me some CCTV footage. It was of a man getting off the bus in Sligo. But because it was so busy, we carry up to hundreds of people a day, I couldn't recollect him. But then they told me his name was Peter Bergman.
He would have arrived here as a walk-in. That means he wouldn't have had a reservation made, he would have just walked in the door. He would have filled out his reservation form. We would have asked him for some details, his name, his address, and that he wanted to book the room for 3 nights. He paid us in cash on arrival.
He signed in using the name Peter Bergman, Bergmann. Some countries use one N, others use 2. The indications are that Austrian nationals use 2 N's. That's the name he used, that's the name he signed, with an address in a city called Wien, or Wien in Austria. He didn't provide any documentary proof of his identity. We know from inquiries with the Austrian police that such an address does not exist, nor has it done so for many, many years. It's a vacant lot. It appears that he used a false name. He certainly used a false address. There are no passports, or have been no passports issued to a male of that name, fitting that description or that age profile, anywhere in mainland Europe, America and South America. No record in any of those locations of a Peter Bergman.
He was a familiar face around the hotel for the weekend. He would come down for breakfast. We would see him at the elevator at about 8:30 in the morning. We'd be returning to his room. He would always make a gesture to us here at the desk, so that's how I would have probably known him.
It was clear from early morning that he had a purple plastic carrier bag. He would have that each time that he left the hotel, going out in and around Sligo. And when he returned on each occasion, he didn't appear to be carrying any bag. On the Saturday itself, we established that he had gone into the post office here in Sligo. He had purchased 8 82-cent stamps and airmail stickers. Now, we were never able to establish where those letters were posted, to who the letters were posted, or when he posted them. But certainly he had obviously correspondence to send to someone, somewhere.
One of the girls that would clean the rooms came down. They couldn't get into his room. So I went to the room that day and I knocked and I got no reply. So I opened the door and I went in, and as I walked in, I knew I startled him. He was just standing inside the door from us. Remember, it was kind of like he froze and he looked at me. It wasn't that kind of a startled look. It was nearly like as if I caught him doing something that he shouldn't have been, or that I caught him off guard. It was relief, I think, that it was me. Whether he was expecting somebody or something, I don't know. But I think he was relieved to see that it was a member of staff from the hotel that had entered the room.
Around 11 a.m. he approached the taxi driver and he pointed to the Strand Hill area on the map, and he asked a question about where there was a quiet beach that he wanted to go for a swim. And the taxi driver explained to him that in his view the Rosses Point beach was quieter. He got out and had a look at the area and seemed contented, and got back into the taxi and returned back into Sligo itself. He didn't really communicate with people, he didn't mix with people. Going back to the letters that he posted, I believe he has friends, he has family somewhere.
Wouldn't have interacted with everybody else here or, other residents. He would have kept very much to himself. He was very hard to keep track of because he was in and out so much. Into the elevator, he was just constant flow of traffic with him in and out the front door with this purple bag.
The purple plastic bag was becoming more significant. It was quite clear that he was disposing of items of personal property in and around Sligo. We would have done extensive searches throughout Sligo, be it rubbish bins, public areas, gardens of properties, private properties, car parks. We even searched the local dump in the hope that we might have been able to find some of his property that might have helped us to identify who he actually was. He had obviously all of this planned during some of the occasions that he left the hotel, where he was going to dispose of the next piece of property or the next bag of clothing or whatever was in the bag. CCTV cameras are highly visible all over Sligo town. It's quite likely he would have identified their locations. If he didn't, we would have picked up where he was disposing of the clothing. So, whilst he had no difficulty with people seeing him on the CCTV and his movements, he certainly went to great lengths to ensure that the property that he disposed of was never found, because that is not identifiable anywhere on any of the CCTV.
He would have came to reception that morning and asked us for a late checkout, meaning that he could stay on in the room for an extra hour or two or whatever. There wouldn't have been an issue because he may have been waiting for a late train or a bus or whatever. So the only thing he mentioned was that he had some errands to run.
After he had made that request, again the purple bag appears, being carried out, leaving the Sligo City Hotel, and obviously at this stage it was to dispose of the last few items of personal property that he had. He left the hotel shortly after 1 p.m. Now, when he's leaving the hotel, he has 3 bags with him again. He has the laptop type black bag, which he's carrying on his shoulder. He has the black hold-all, and again, he has the purple bag. Now, he obviously walks from the Sligo City Hotel to the bus terminal, and en route, again, we couldn't establish where, he disposes of the black hold-all type bag. So when he gets to the bus depot, all he has with him are the 2 bags. He went into the coffee shop on the bus station and ordered a cappuccino and a sandwich. Did appear to take paper from his pocket and wrote notes. Now obviously we were working in reverse. It was 3-4 days afterwards when we were viewing this footage, so we didn't have the benefit of being able to secure whatever piece of paper he had torn up.
Normally I would be on different routes, but that particular week the normal driver was on holidays, so I was on that particular route for that week. The only thing I just remember of him was He came on the bus and asked for a ticket to Ross's Point, so I said a single or return, and he said a single, and we went to Ross's Point and he got off in Ross's Point.
It was relatively empty, but there was a few people walking. But this guy just stood out because he was so professionally dressed, or just stood out in the black clothes, and
He was very tall, yeah.
yeah, and he had a newspaper under his arm, and he was just walking, and it just didn't look right.
He looked almost out of place and out of time. The beach was very narrow at the time, and he seemed to be pacing it, didn't he?
Yeah,
He,
yeah.
we didn't say anything at that time, but he certainly took both of our attentions, I suppose.
Yeah, and 30 minutes later, we were on our return, and I said to Fiona, that guy is still on the beach. It looks strange.
I noticed this man, and he was fully clothed. He has his trousers rolled up to his knees, and he was walking parallel to the water with his bare feet, with his ankle deep in the water. And he just seemed to be kind of a bit stooped with his hands behind his back, as if he was in another world.
It was highlighted by virtue of the fact that he was walking across the sunbeam parallel to the beach, but right through this beam of sunlight.
And it was amazing because when he actually walked into the light of the sunbeam, he turned to gold as well.
I was out for dinner with my girlfriend Caroline. It was her birthday, but it was late, and we said we'd come down for just a walk on the beach before we headed home. We were walking back up towards the ramp, and the man was walking down the ramp, obviously to come onto the beach when we first encountered him. He had grey hair, black leather jacket, pale enough skin. He didn't really say anything to us. We said hello to him. He nodded back, and he didn't say anything else. Only for the fact that it was 10:30, 11 o'clock. I would have completely forgotten about it, just like any other encounter I have with any other person every day.
My son Brian was preparing for a triathlon, so the reason we're here for 6:30 was that he would get his training over early in the morning, and apart from that I walk the beach every day. The fog was beginning to lift, and I noticed this, something like almost something from a shop window, like a mannequin that was in the sand. And of course, as I got closer I realised it was actually a person, and that he seemed to have drowned. That was a little shock for the system.
I suppose in a way you go into autopilot mode and do what you have to do, you know, alert the Gardaí.
I said to Brian, would he join me in saying the Lord's Prayer, which he did, and we said the little prayer, and it brought a little bit of serenity or calmness to the situation.
The clothing that was on the deceased body, he had removed each individual label from those clothes. It just shows the level of planning, the level of detail he had gone into to ensure that he was never identified. We were obviously getting a picture at that stage that this man had meticulously planned his final days, his final act, and the lengths that he went to was just unbelievable.
When we started to examine him, there was no evidence of foul play, nor was there any evidence of, at least externally, of saltwater drowning. When we did the rest of the medical examination, we found that he has extensive cancer of his prostate, and he had tumour in his bone. There were other findings. There was evidence of previous heart attacks. Toxicology report showed that there was no evidence of the common painkillers. There was no evidence of aspirin, paracetamol, or indeed any opiate-based painkillers. So For somebody that has that extensive disease, that would be a little bit unusual. The truth is, we may never know what actually happened in those last few minutes and what he was hoping to achieve. What we can say, he was there. It would seem that something happened. Who knows?
From really the moment that his body was found. Washed up on the rocks at Ross's Point Beach, we started to carry out the investigations. We explored every conceivable option that was available to us. We used the media both in mainland Europe, nationally and internationally. We had secured his DNA, his fingerprints. Those were circulated to all police forces. He did not feature in any jurisdiction. He may have had the belief that his remains would have been washed out to sea and may never have been found. He left a footprint, basically on CCTV. The images themselves are haunting in the sense that he remained on his own. He didn't communicate or mingle with anyone. In effect, he was writing the last days of his life, and it was all done on his own terms, according to his own plan, and that's quite obvious now with the benefit of hindsight. I have to be satisfied with our investigations at this time that Peter Bergman does not exist. It's highly likely that he never did.